Our mystery speaker is going to join us on this stage. A very inspirational talk that we'll be hearing from our mystery speaker who was able to be here today. Please welcome Cindy Janet onto the stage.
You guys hear me? They told me that they would take care of the speaking up at the front there. Yeah, good. Sorry guys, I'm going to sit because I'm one of the stroke patients, as you can see, and I'm just going to make myself comfortable here. So I apologize for all the, moving around, but you guys got your exercise, so I figure I get to do mine. Is there a, yeah, just in case I need that. Thanks. So, late last night I got the invitation from Resvan to tell you guys my story. And I thought, well, gee, when does anybody get a chance to talk about themselves for 10 whole minutes? I'm like, sure. And I've told this story a lot over the last, I'd say probably a month and a half or so to friends and family. So today, this morning actually, I got up early and put together these slides for you guys today. So I hope you find my story interesting. It was certainly a shock. But just to start out with a little bit of my background and who I am. So I'm married. I have no kids. We're what they call dinks, double income, no kids. Me and my husband, who is just as supportive as can be. And I'm really fortunate to have a very strong circle of friends, mostly from my work and from my triathlete background. Actually, those circles of people have really come out of the woodwork. Like, I'm going to get teary just thinking about it, how much support I've gotten from them. Especially given the fact that my family is from Canada, this is my husband's. And so the opportunity for them to come down and be with me during this really critical time was just not possible. In fact, my mom passed away a year ago, and my dad was going through some foot surgery right around the same time that all of this was happening. So, to say the least, I think everybody can identify with this. Life happens when you're making other plans. I'm a planner. I'm a project manager. I've done stroke research for 9 years, as I think you saw in the earlier slide. And so when I was sitting at my desk, which is where you would normally find Cindy Jahans, is sitting at her desk working, long hours. And I was fortunate enough to have started my own business, about a month earlier, started research consulting, basically. And I had 3 clients. I was very, very busy. And I was, convinced and very eager to get my emails sent out for the day so that I could go on my daily 5-mile hike at Quicksilver Park, which is near where I live. And so I was rushing through my work when all of a sudden I felt like I was literally, going to faint. I got flushed and I'm like, what's going on? I got all woozy. I'm like, something isn't right. I knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what. And I'm like, well, if I was going to faint, I'd be on the ground already. I'm not fainting. So I tried to stand up and I knew. I knew without a shadow of a doubt what was happening and that I was having a stroke because I was so dizzy and I'd lost my balance. I couldn't stand. I was starting to feel this tingling in my lips primarily, and then later on it eventually spread to numbness throughout my entire right side of my face. And eventually I vomited. I didn't vomit right away, but you'll see a funny little lesson learned on the next slide about that one. And oddly to me, the one symptom that didn't fit in my head, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I'm having a posterior stroke. I don't know where in the posterior circulation it is, but I know it's posterior. This comes from my years of doing clinical research in stroke. And so I'm like, I don't know how long I have. I don't know if I'm going to end up, with a basilar artery occlusion. I don't know if it's moving around. I don't know what's going on exactly, but I do know that this is not good. And so I just moved into survival mode, right? I think most of us would do that. And so I crawled literally on my hands and my knees, which is all I could do. First to the front door, actually, because I thought that's where my friend who had showed up to the house earlier that day to do yard work for us. Talk about serendipity. The title of this slide or the rest of this talk could just as easily be, wow, when things go right, because I'm a living example of when things go right. And the fact that my friend was there and witnessed my stroke onset, literally, we'd had a bite to eat, and then 15 minutes later, I was yelling at the back door, help, help. you know, something's wrong, I don't feel right. And she, you know, smartly, she's a smart girl, contacted and called EMS, called 911 right away. I mean, in my head, I had this whole dialogue going on, like, you should call 911 and then you should call Peter. So, like, even to this day, I'm not really sure what I was thinking about directing her to do and what she was telling me she was doing and where the two actually overlap and merge. But the fact of the matter is she did all the right things. And so, you know, EMS came. And, you know, again, you know, talk about luck and serendipity and just the fact that everything went right for me. I feel so lucky. They arrived quickly. They, you know, did a quick assessment. These two big, burly EMT guys come on into the house. And by this time, I'm laying on the floor near the back door, kind of on my right shoulder, because that's, you know, listening to Dr. Veen earlier, about just sort of head tilting and leaning to the right. I mean, I was doing a lot of that. I could not sit up straight. I could not stand. I could not look straight. I mean, my whole body just wanted to curl up into a ball onto the right-hand side. And so, you know, they basically hauled me up on my feet and said, "Lady, we want you to walk to the gurney." And I looked at them, I'm like, "Are you sure? Are you sure you want me to walk? I don't think I can walk." And they're like, no, we'll support you. So they literally lifted me up under each arm and just kind of, you know, I felt like the Flintstones, like walking. You know, my feet were moving, but I wasn't really bearing any weight. And they got me up to the gurney and got me onto the gurney and got me into the van or into the ambulance. And then they gave me an option. Do you want to go to Sam Trees or do you want to go to Good Sam? And I, again, with my experience in clinical trials, and I think there's some people from Good Sam at the back. I see them there, my care team. You know, I chose Good Sam and I said, "Please take me there." I was fortunate. I was in between the two. This ambulance team would have taken me to the closest ambulance if I lived somewhere else. But because I was in between these two, they actually gave me the choice. And I chose Good Sam because I knew that they had a comprehensive stroke center. And I knew that if I needed a thrombectomy, if I was having a basilar occlusion, if I didn't have much time, and time is brain, I needed to get there quickly and I needed to get to some place where they could do a thrombectomy because I wanted to leave all my options open. And so it only took about 15 minutes for us to get to Good Sam, but the interesting lesson that I learned, which is at the bottom of this slide, is that, you know, you might think you know what you're doing, but you really don't. If you're not an EMT driver, listen to the EMT driver, because when they want to give you Zofran, you should take it. Basically, I just threw up the whole way there because it was too little too late, right? So in the ER, let's see, I've got some notes here. Again, things just continue to go better and better for me. Like in terms of the stroke team, they recognize me, I recognize them. Dr. Satchev was my attending neurologist. I'd done a site initiation visit for them when I worked at Concentric, and then, you know, Ursula eventually came around to my room. Fern, the stroke coordinator, Dr. Malik, stopped by and paid a visit. And Dr. Patadar was my interventionalist, and you guys who were here yesterday would have heard him talk, and his talk really was poignant in the sense that expect the unexpected. Well, when it came to me and my, you know, my incidents, I was a healthy 56-year-old woman. It's like, she's a triathlete and a runner. Like, why is she having a stroke? Like, she doesn't smoke, she doesn't, you know, she's not obese, she doesn't have any of these risk factors. Why is she having a stroke? Sort of the same questions I was asking myself, like, why is this happening? Right? But within an hour, I mean, I had my diagnosis, not only what was wrong with me in terms of a right vert dissection, it was spontaneous, but the underlying cause, which was this fibromuscular dystrophy, or FMD, that he also spoke about yesterday. And I heard some women behind me yesterday saying, what's that? What's that? I haven't heard of it. Well, you know, they've got what is this? FMD something association. They've got a website for those of you who are interested, but I guess it's rare. My guess is it's one of these diseases that's so hard to diagnose, and it's misdiagnosed often, and oftentimes, unfortunately, it's people like me who show up in ER with either cardiac, renal, or in this case, brain injuries due to arterial dissections that end up sort of triggering the thought process of the interventionalists and so on and so forth to actually look for this. And of course, it was on the CTA, I believe, and the outwash is what I heard, and I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but the outflow is where the first indication came that I might have this disease, and the diagnostic angio within 12 hours showed that. It A, confirmed the dissection, and then B, confirmed also the diagnosis of FMD. So there's inner health and there's outer health, but they don't always match. And I've always said this, like whenever there's people who fall off their bikes, we had a friend who fell off their bike and with a massive, heart attack. He's alive to tell the tale, but it's like you would never guess, right? You would never, ever guess. So you can't assume anything in life, and don't assume that just because you live a healthy lifestyle that you're necessarily not going to be succumbing, or not one of the ones who succumb to one of these. Not that I'm advocating living in fear, and I certainly don't do that. I mean, I have one vertebral artery left that's providing blood to my whole brain, and if that goes out, I'm in trouble. But I'm not going to live my life like that because I don't believe in it. I believe that you live every day for what it is, and you move on. I had, an excellent care team at Good Sam. I couldn't ask for better. They were phenomenal, and the coordination of care and the communication, not only between the team members at Good Sam, but within the stroke community, the broader Bay Area stroke community. I knew that they were discussing my case, not only amongst themselves, but with other stroke teams around the Bay, including UCSF and even ones outside of the Bay Area. So, I felt very much like I was getting VIP treatment. I like to think that I got the same treatment that any stroke patient would get when they would go into a care center like this. I felt well cared for, so did my visitors. They never once kicked anybody out. Like, they always invited my family. And then my husband, who was like my #1 supporter, basically, he was put in charge of the communications. And the first people I communicated with were my contract, clients, which I had 3 of, because I had commitments that I knew I wasn't going to be able to make. And then the second was family. We had to roll out the news slowly. We didn't roll it out right away. We waited until we had at least, a fairly decent idea about what was going to happen and what our timeline was going to be like. So, I was told fairly quickly, fairly early on, which again, I really, really appreciate from the team, is, 3 to 6 months, you look like you could potentially make a full recovery, with the OT and the PT and doing all the right things. And here I am today, 6 weeks later, up on stage talking to you fun people. So I'm I think they were right. So just some quick pictures just to give you an idea about what my inpatient rehab looked like. Again, the coordination of care between the ICU nurses, the PT and the OT inpatient. You saw those goggles I was wearing. Dr. Dean was talking about them earlier, the blocking. I had double vision. It's gone now. So I was one of those lucky patients again who used the Brock string, practiced, focusing, and got, it was just it wasn't like I noticed it getting better, but all of a sudden one day I noticed it wasn't there anymore. And it's wow, what they said was true. They know what they're talking about. Time heals, right? Here you can see I'm still wearing them. That was my OT. So even an inpatient, they took us on field trips to Trader Joe's to go and get food, getting us ready to move into the community and getting us ready to move home. It wasn't all hard work. I did get to sit out in the sun and did get some of my friends and my husband, put them to work pushing me around the block when I wanted some fresh air. But there were hours and hours of OT and PT. Fortunately for me, I didn't need speech therapy, and I didn't, I passed my swallow test just fine. The other interesting thing that Good Sam offered was inpatient acupuncture. They have an acupuncturist come on site 3 times a week, and I'm well, it's not going to hurt, right? I may as well try everything. So I took it. In fact, I'm still seeing this acupuncturist post-discharge. So discharge, at discharge, I was discharged in basically 21 days from the time of onset until exit home from inpatient rehab. Yes, I still have, weeks and weeks of outpatient PT and OT to go through, and I'm about not quite halfway through that yet. But there are so many people to thank. This is my dear husband, Peter, Nurse Edith. She was special to me. Tiffany, Canadian nurse, working down here. This is me leaving and me coming home, and me coming home to all of my welcome, cards and flowers and everything. And this is the staff at Good Sam Inpatient who, this may be a little bit of an outdated picture, but there were very, very, very many special people that I met and that helped me on my rehabilitation. And it started I would say it started in ICU, literally in ICU. I was up playing cards, and I was, I was being visited by PT and OT and speech therapy almost daily. So, you know, they didn't miss a beat, and everything just worked, like I said before, like it was supposed to. The journey continues. This is me with my good friend Julie on my second hike. This is me just the other day out at Capitola with my friend Kathy, the one who was there with me on the day that it happened, and the one who has really been by my side between her and Peter. You know, they've really been my support network, as strong as you can get. But family and friends, you know, so important, and especially again, you know, as an expat, you know, whose family is in Canada. They're not close. We talk, we Skype, but it's not quite the same. But I will leave you, you know, sort of with this important last lesson that I learned, which, you know, the OT and the PTs are telling me this over and over and over again, but thick skull Cindy, you know, it's hard for me to necessarily, you know, incorporate it into my day-to-day life, but quality is more important than quality. So, you know, me being the triathlete, if 1 mile is good, 2 miles must be better. If 2 miles is good, 4 miles must be better. You know, if I go every day, it's got to be good for me, right? Wrong. Because all I was doing was training my brain the bad way of how to walk. And so I've slowed down. I've really taken their principles with me out in the field, so to speak, when I'm traveling and hiking and just at home. And I try to incorporate and do what they tell me I should do. So I'm going to leave you with this last. It's about 1.5 minutes. Do we have the time?
Yes.
Okay. I'll let them run this video. It's one that my husband put together. It's a little bit corny. The original audience was family and friends, not scientists and medical personnel, but I hope you enjoy it. Hi folks, I can't really turn my head and talk at the same time. It's really busy.
Can you chew gum?
I can chew gum and walk. I can look at where I'm going and walk. I can use hiking poles and walk, but I can't turn my head and walk. That is too much
Today, thanks.
right now. Yeah. But we can do this. Are there any questions? Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's not just me. It's really what I wanted to actually end this talk on, was saying thanks to all of you in the room who I know are healthcare providers and caregivers. Some of you are PTs, OTs, doctors, nurses, etc. And without you taking care of people like me, the way that these people took care of me, like, I just feel so thankful that this happened the way that it did and where it did, and that I was able to go where I was able to go for my my care and my rehab. So thank you to all of you for what you do every single day. It means